Hello friends, this is our first video of Kubernetes interview question. Yesterday also I have uploaded one video of Git and GitHub, which is the first video of Git and GitHub, and this is first video of Kubernetes interview question. So let's start the video. Basically we start from the basic, and after slowly we move towards the advanced interview question. Okay, so this is the one of the basic interview question which asked most of time in the interview. So what explain Kubernetes architecture with its component. Okay, so this is the image of the architecture, and you can see there are master node and worker node. Okay, and it consists of master node consists of API server, controllers and scheduler and etcd, and worker node consists of kubelet, pod, container, runtime and pods. Okay, so I have made the list of the components, that is master node, worker node, kube API server, kube controller manager, kube scheduler, etcd, kubelet and kube proxy. Okay, so first we read all the points, and after that I will explain how you remember, because I will explain in the analogy of factory. Means I will explain each component how they work together using an analogy of factory. We take an example of factory and how the factory will work, how the all the members of factory will work. So uh, uh, we assume in that way. Okay, so the first component is the master node. The node the master control plane is the central management unit of Kubernetes cluster. It oversees the entire cluster's operation and coordination. Okay, making high level decisions about how applications should run and ensuring that the actual state of the cluster matches the desired state. Okay, after that, control plane or master node consists of the API server, scheduler, controller manager, etcd. Together this component form the master control plane, which act as a brain and command center of Kubernetes cluster. After that, the API server act as the entry point for the interaction with the Kubernetes cluster. It exposes the Kubernetes API, which allows users, administrator and other components to communicate with the cluster. etcd is one of the storage. Assume etcd is a distributed key value store that serves as the Kubernetes backing store for all the cluster data. It holds the configuration data and the state of the entire cluster. This includes the information about the pod, services, replication settings and more. After that, the control manager is responsible for monitoring the state of various objects in the cluster and taking corrective actions to ensure the desired state is maintained. It includes the several built-in controller such as replication controller, deployment controller and stateful controller. After that, the next component is scheduler. The scheduler in the Kubernetes is a component responsible for assigning pods to node in the cluster. When a new pod is created, the scheduler decides which node within the cluster should run that pod, and it considers various factors such as resources requirement, node capacity, quality of service requirements and any constraints specified by the user or by default. And these are some working of schedulers. This is option, it's just for your knowledge. If you explain this 3 to 4 line, it is also okay. The interviewer will gets idea what you are talking. So for your information, just I have added or included these points, that pod creation, scheduler decision, node selection, binding and pod scheduling. Okay, so this work also schedulers do. Okay, the next is the worker node. Okay, worker nodes, also known as the worker machines or worker server, are the heart of the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, this is the heart of the Kubernetes cluster. They are responsible for running containers executing the actual workload of the application. Worker node consists of the kubelet, kubeproxy, container runtime, uh, container storage interface. Okay, kubelet. What is kubelet? The kubelet is an agent that runs on the worker node and communicates with the master control plane. Its primary responsibility is to ensure that the container within the pods are running and the healthy as per the desired state defined in the cluster's configuration. After that, kubeproxy set of the routing and load balancing so that the application seamlessly communicate with each other and external resources. After that, container runtime. A container runtime is the software responsible for running the containers on the worker nodes. It is responsible for running the containers. Okay. Pods. Pods are the fundamental building blocks in the Kubernetes that group one or more containers together and provide a shared environment for them to run within the same network and storage context. When multiple containers are present in a single pod, they are managed as single unit and share the pod's resources such as networking and storage. And after that, the container. A container is like a lightweight portable box that holds everything an application needs to run. It includes the code, runtime, system tools, and libraries necessary for the application to function properly. Containers provides a consistent environment for applications to run across different computing environments, making it easier to develop, deploy, and manage softwares. Think of it Think of it as a self-contained package that can be easily moved around and run on any system that supports the container. Okay, now let's break down each component and how they work together using an analogy of a factory. Okay, so the first component is the master node. Assume that this is like a brain of the operation where all the decisions are made, and it consists of several components, that is cube API server, controller and scheduler etc. Okay, so what is cube API server? Okay, so the cube API server is, assume it likes a receptionist who are working in the factory. Okay, it receives all the requests and it directs them to the right place. Okay, this is the work of the cube API server or API server. For example, if someone wants to deploy a new application in the factory, they talk to cube API server. So this is the work of the API server. Okay, after that, the next component we will discuss that the controller or the controller manager. So assume that this is a manager. Think this is as a manager who ensures everything in the factory is running smoothly. It watches over the factory state and makes changes if necessary. For instance, if a machine breaks down, the cube controller manager will take decision to fix it. Okay, so this is the work of the controller or controller manager. The next component is the scheduler. So assume that it's like a planner in the factory. It's decide where to place a new task or jobs. For example, if a new order comes in, the cube scheduler determines which machine should handle it based on the factor like availability and capacity. If it is able to handle, then scheduler do handle that task to it. Okay, after that, the warehouse worker node. So assume that these worker nodes like workers on the factory floor. Okay, they do the actual work of running the application and handling the task. each worker node has two main worker node has the how many components are there? 1 2 3 4. Okay, 4 components. So what is this kubelet? So the kubelet, this is like a supervisor for each worker. It takes order from the control plane or master node and ensures that the tasks are carried out properly or not. For example, if the kubelet controller manager tells means this controller manager tells kubelet a worker node to start a new job, or the kubelets makes sure that it's gets done or not. Okay, so this type of work kubelets will done. And kubeproxy, what is kubeproxy, or we can say the network proxy. Okay, network proxy or kubeproxy, both are similar. Okay, this is like a traffic manager in the factory, assume like that. It handles the network communication between the different parts of the factory. For instance, if one machine needs to talk to another, the kubeproxy ensures that the message get delivered correctly or not. So it's act like a communicator, you can say, to each other, to communicate with each other and share the message, like act as a mediator. Okay, so assume like this. And after that there are pods and containers. Okay, and we already discussed this, what is pods and containers. It's a basic, so it's a fundamental building blocks in the Kubernetes that group one or more containers together. Okay, it's a collection of the containers. This pod consists of one or more containers. Okay, so like in this way you get you can remember and you will never forget in your interview. So how the things are work, assume the in the analogy of a factory, so how the factory is working, assume that it is a factory. Okay, so thank you, this is our first video and we will meet in the our next video. Thank you.